Hello, welcome in daily newspaper editorials audio program. Now headlines. Flying home, Times of India. More migrants, not kids. Dubri Subbarao. Being buyer of arms helps being seller. Solar a game changer in women's empowerment. The Hindu. Now editorials in detail. Flying home, the Times of India. India can't be just be an assemble plus component maker of military platforms. Invest and R&D for true indignation. Times of India editorials. In what is being played as a big leap for indigenous defense production, Modi and Spanish PM yesterday jointly inaugurated the Tata Aircraft Complex for manufacturing the C-295 aircraft in Vadodara. The C-295 deal was inked in 2021 with Airbus Defence and Space SA Spain for the supply of 56 aircraft. Of these, 16 aircraft were to be delivered directly by Airbus from Spain, while the remaining 40 were to be manufactured at the Tata facility, the first private sector final assembly line for military aircraft in India. While this sounds great, the big question is what percentage of the aircraft production will be truly indigenous. The last thing India needs to be become the world's largest assembler of military platforms. Long way to go. As per report, the C-295s will gradually incorporate local components going from 48 local content for each unit intellectually to 75% local content by the final aircraft. Airbus has already identified local suppliers for this purpose, but 75% local content is just a good start if the target is actually achieved. We need to be able to produce the aircraft start to finish if we are to attend to indigenism. Sure, learning by doing has its merits. China too did this for years, but it won't lead to defense production independence. That requires indigenous development of fundamental technologies. Need tectonic. India continues to be the largest importer of defense platforms, accounting for 9.8% of total global imports in the 2019 to 2023 period. This puts it in a structurally valuable position. True Indian defense exports have also increased in the last few years, touching 2.6 billion in 2023-24, but bearing American, which has emerged as India's biggest client of finished weapons systems. Other countries are of finished weapons system. Other countries are essential buying subsystems, ammunition and forces from India, plus domestic share in the Indian Armed Forces. Capital acquisition has hardly increased since 2014. Add to this a growing procurement budge, and the country remains dependent for foreign source of critical defense hardware. Solution lies in massive investment and defense R&D and engineering for military industrial complex, creating a defense industry ecosystem comprising defense PSUs, private players, suppliers, R&D, think tank and universities still remains the goal, but this can't be achieved without sufficient investment and education to create skilled manpower in defense. License manufacturing can only get you so far. Where are the Indian equivalents of the Sea Baby and Bayraktar drones? More migrants, not kids. The South's success in population control has triggered economics and political tensions. But contrary to what South Netas says, the answer is not higher fertility but settling out of state workers locally. Luckily, Dubri Subbarao, the writer, is a former RBI governor. Last week, Andhra CM Chandrababu Naidu urged couples to have more children to fight the burden of an aging population in the state. The next day, his counterpart Tamil Nadu CM Stan invoked a Tamil saying a large family is a happy family to ask his people to adopt a large family norm. Although the two chief ministers announced the issue differently, the underlying message was unmistakably clear. Don't panels state that have succeeded in population control. If you do, we have no alternative but to grow our population. So what exactly is the grievance of state successful in population control? It straddles both politics and economics. Let's make the economic stand first. There are several routes through which center resources flow to state. The most structure of these in finance commission transfers, whereby the center gives away 41% of its tax pool to states. Horizontal distribution of this pool across state is done by a formula in which most variables are scaled by population. The larger a state's population, the higher is its share. Finance commission appointed once every 5 years have historically been mandated to use the 1971 population number so as not to give a preserves inactive to state to neglect family planning with an eye on a higher share of tax devolution. This long-standing norm was changed when the 15th Finance Commission appointed in 2017 was asked to use the 2011 population numbers in its assessment of state expenditure needs. States that had done well in establishing population, typically the southern state, protest is change in the base year, calling it a penalty for good performance. Possibly taking a lesson from that, the 16th Finance Commission appointed last year has not been given any specific mandate on what population figures to use. It is very unlikely though that they will revert to the 1971 figures. The second major route for central research support to states in centrally sponsored schemes CSS. Here again, the share of a state in total CSS pool is largely driven by its population, although in a less structured way than finance commission transfers. Central public investment via soft infra, example an IIT or an IIMS, and hard infra, example roads, ports, is another major route for central research flow to state. This is the most politically driven segment of central support and is obviously influenced by vote bank. States with larger populations tend to corner more benefits. All in all, states with larger population tend to get privileged in central research support to state as population growth rates have diverged in recent decades, with some states having reached fertility below replacement level while others stay significantly above that. State which have which have done well in population control have begun to hurt more. The political dimensions have largely to be with the impending delimitation of parliament constitution due in 2026. In order not to disincentivize the small family norm, delimitation of parliament seats. Basis population was frozen for 25 years in 1976 and again for another 25 years by BJP government in 2001. States that succeeded on the population front now apprehend that they will be penalized by loss of parliament representatives is the looming delimitation happens in 2026. In some, it's a double whammy for states that have done well on population control. Their share to central resource is diminishing even as they are said to lose political clout. It will be unwise to let the debate get out of hand. Reality is we will still have a population problem at 1.4 billion. Our population continues to be above the carrying capacity of our ecosystem. We need to more evidence for this than that what we see and experience every day. Our slums and squatter settlements, our crowded cities and towns, drying lakes and dying rivers, barren hilltops, polluted air and water. When we surpassed China last year to become the most populous country, there was much talk to a demographic dividend because of the large size of our working age population. But a demographic dividend is not inevitably it will materialize if and only if we are able to provide work for the working age people. Finding jobs even for the exciting level of population is proving to be a daunting challenge. It will get even more daunting as artificial intelligence compacts away jobs from humans. Given that situation, it will be foolhardy for us to believe that we have beaten the population problem. It is the it is the uneven success in population control across states that has ignited political tensions. Solution is not for states that have reduced family size to engineer a population reversal. The solution to that is to even the distribution of population across the country. Historical successful cities have been characterized by internal migrants, labor mobility, people moving to where jobs and opportunities are has in fact been one of the fundamentals of the American success story, encouraging internal migrants, not abandoning population control should be our policy priority. Being seller of arms help being seller the Economic Times. China makes India a reliable vendor to US. The lender of great con- consumption is making inroads in its bid to also become the land of great production across sector. Defense is the one of them. India is using a mix of contracts, manufactured purchase offsets and indigenation to ramp up exports. It plays as the top of the list of boys with toys and an ambitious drive to reduce import dependency are working to its advantage. Improving fiscal health favors higher allocation to spending on equipment. Our salaries, domestic military industry complex, especially with politics promoting private sector participation in defense procurement. The confluence the several long-term trends is likely to keep improving India's position in the global arms trade as it's climbing the value chain towards developing weapon system at home. Strategic consideration also work to India's advantage. It has to maintain a large military presence against threats in its neighborhood, which sets out its need for hardware. But New Delhi can use it. Largely non-aligned foreign policy further applied to purse sales. It also enjoys labor cost in advantage that render its defense export competitive. Modern conflict is spread over a larger global canvas that lower entry barriers to the armaments industry, which has established strengths in software, which is shaping the nature of autonomous weapons. India's emergence as an arms export to the huge France and Armenia, among others, coincides with a fractured geopolitical situation where supplies are being affected by Western sanctions against Russia. China does not seem to be making much headway in selling arms. A crop of alternative exported, including selling arms, a crop of alternative export, including South Korea and Turkey, is visible visible. India expected to find a place among them. The differentiation, of course, are India's economic heft and its strategic complacence, and will keep its defense budget oversized relative to its comparative it equation with China makes India a rival vendor to US, the world's largest arms dealer. K to India's ambitions. Solar, a game changer in women's empowerment. The Hindu. For solar energy to truly empower community, policy must be equitable, positioning women not just as beneficiaries but also as change agents. Nikhil Kumar, Karan Mangotra, a climate communication professional and leads partnership at International Solar Alliance. Until, until Charles Fritz installed the first rooftop photovoltaic solar array using 1% efficiently selenium cells on a roof in New York City in 1884. The sun was a humble driving force behind photosynthesis, evaporation, and countless nature processes. Today, apart from being the major factor in the climate patterns that sustains life on Earth, it is also a transformative democratic force in electricity generation, distinct from traditional sources such as coal, oil, gas, nuclear, and hydropower, which require extensive infrastructure and intermediary transmission lines. Solar energy can now be harnessed directly at its point of use in homes. It is now a home produce. The impact of decentralization of power generation has significant implications for both the environment, substantial and social structure. The ability of generate energy close to where it consumed unlocks a cascade of benefits beyond more convenient socially, economically, and developmentally. Solar places power literally and figuratively into the hands of individuals and communities, breaking down barriers that have long excluded them from the energy economy. The shift empowers people, particularly women, making them direct participants in the economic and for change. Women often bear the burden of poor energy access, impacting their health, safety, economic potential solar addresses is this. In Gujarat, Little Ranu of Kutch women salt farmers have transitioned from expensive diesel to solar pumps, boosting their economic by 94% and reducing CO2 emissions by up to 1,15,000 metric tons annually. Initiatives such as a Barefoot Solar India, the Grameen Shakti Bangladesh, and Solar Sister Africa empower women to become solar energy engineers, benefiting millions and improving community health and safety. For example, We Care Solar suitcases reduce perinatal that deaths by 72% in Agenda's health center. Solar, especially through localized solution, is advancing women's financial inclusion and enabling incoming generation directed towards education, healthcare, and other essential activities by integration women across the value chain from individuals to entrepreneurs. Solar is driving society progress and elevating the status of women. In fact, solar employs more women than any other energy sector. In 2022, the solar photovoltaic industry alone provided jobs to around 4.9 million people, with women accounting for 40% of the workforce. With India's ambitious renewable target, the sector is expected to create 3 million new jobs by 2030, offering significant opportunity for women. In the current trends hold no other energy project comes close to this potential. Clean and scalable, but there are challenges. Solar also uplifts migrants community unlike coal, which as improves resource-rich religion. Solar offers a sustainable path forward. India's coal mining districts exemplify the resource curse, where local communities suffer from poor health, education, and living conditions, with over 50% in poverty. Distributed solar system in energy production with community well-being driving climate resilience of grid project provide clean energy to areas without traditional electricity, supporting economic development in rural religion. Rooftop installations and mini grids offers scalable eco-friendly solution, creating local jobs without the environment impact of large scale projects. Effective community engagement is crucial for the success of these projects. For instance, in India, formalized community institutions such as self-help groups, farmer producer organization, and panchayati raj institutions are internal to village infrastructure playing where formal structures are absent. Rural energy communities can oversee mini grid operations, economic capex, everything from planning and installations to traffic determination and maintenance, which ensure that energy access through and benefits the entire community. As solar technology progresses, three challenges persist: geographical imbalance, with most investment concentrated in developed nations, leaving developing countries, particularly Africa, lagging. Sectoral imbalance is evident as large-scale solar farms receive the majority of funding, while smaller crucial applications such as solar pumps and cold storage are overlooked. Manufacturing concentration is just two countries, disrupts supply chains and inflates prices, a problem set to intensify with rising global demand. The challenge at the home level will be to ensure easy availability and affordability of solar. This will require robust government and market support. The second is to focus on the life cycle of solar technology with an emphasis on recycling and circularity to manage waste. Embezzling cleaning guidelines for processing solar photovoltaic materials is vital, ensuring that they contribute to sustainability rather than exacerbate waste issues. A robust framework should mandate produce responsibility and envelop government and end-of-life management collaboration, fostering efficient recycling and encouraging recyclability. Additionally, exploring mobile recycling plants and implementing stringent waste management processes are crucial for changing the environmental and economic health of the solar sector. Politics and gender. A just energy transition is more than a shift from fossil fuels to renewables. It is about ensuring that all communities, especially those historical sidelined, benefits from the change. For solar energy to truly empower communities, it must be inclusive and equitable, positioning women not just as beneficiaries but also as pivotal change agents. This necessitates a revolution of energy politics through a gender lens. Current national level electricity access policies often lack this perspective, limits their effectiveness in combating inequality in the crucial for electrification's initiatives to integrate with sectors such as agriculture, forestry, and rural development to form a holistic approach to energy access. This integration helps to dismantle the systematic barriers that disproportionately affect women, fostering a more inclusive energy economy with the we can ensure that solar supports environment sustainability, drives socio-economic development, and becomes a truly cyclist for a livable planet. Thank you.